Hey guys, this is chess coach Andrew Rankin. In our 7th episode in the series Buffing Your Black Repertoire, I want to share with you another game featuring the Caro Kann Defense. This time is the exchange variation, but a sideline with the odd bishop b5 check. Most importantly, I want you to keep your tactical senses alert and find some nice moves for black. This game was sort of like an Easter egg hunt, and I admit, I didn't even find them all. So the game starts with e4, c6, d4, and d5, your classical Caro Kann setup. My opponent plays the exchange variation with e takes d5. Of course, we take back with the pawn. Queen takes would not be very good because it would be met with knight to c3, winning a tempo. So we play pawn takes, and now my opponent inserts the move bishop to b5 check. This is definitely a sideline, and black is already equal as long as we play the right moves. So the two options here are bishop to d7, trading the light square bishops, or knight to c6. I'm not really sure what I want to do with my light square bishop. I'd be really happy if I can get it outside the pawn chain. I'm not really worried about this bishop being a huge threat, and that's why I just blocked with knight to c6. Now my opponent correctly plays the move c4. He's putting pressure on my center, and he's defending his bishop. But now I can insert the move a6, and I basically force the win of the light square bishop, which means that black now has the bishop pair. So if he retreats the bishop, then I'll probably play a move like d takes c4. And so that's why he played bishop takes c6. And now I play pawn takes c6, and I'm very happy because if he ever takes, I'll take back with the pawn, and he has an isolated pawn, and I have a nice solid pawn chain. Which is always what you're looking for in the Caro Kann. And I guess my opponent was afraid of the move d takes c4, so he played the move c5. But let me explain to you why a move like knight to f3, maintaining the tension here, is much better. Because if I play the move d takes c4 now, these pawns are all weak, and white has more than enough compensation for the loss of the c4 pawn, which is really only going to be temporarily. Most likely, these two pawns are going to go down, and white's going to enjoy a nice game. So c5, however, is really the wrong way to go, and black is already slightly better here. And this is the first Easter egg in the game, and let's hope to see if you guys can find it. So the move here is e5. The idea is that after pawn takes, we can develop the bishop with tempo. The e5 pawn is now weak, and we no longer have a cramping situation in front of us. I, however, was not aware that I could get my cake and eat it too, and I was simply thinking about muffin donut cookies. So I thought, control the center. All right, I'm already doing that. What's next? Develop your pieces. So I played knight to c6, and cookie obviously stands for castle your king. My opponent continues with the move h3, which really identifies that he doesn't know what he's doing here. This would only be good if he had a bishop or a queen on d3, which prevents my light square bishop from coming to any of these squares outside the pawn chain. But I can simply play bishop to b5, bishop to f5, and I'm very happy. My opponent continues with knight to e2, and this is extremely strange. If you're going to play the move h3, preventing the bishop from pinning the knight, then why not put the knight on f3, which is a clearly better square since you can jump into e5 and target my weaknesses. But he played knight to e2. All right. I continued with e6, bishop to g5, pinning the knight, and bishop to e7, breaking the pin. He castles, and now I insert the move h6. Previously, my opponent played the move bishop to b5 and then traded off bishop for knight, and I wanted to give him the opportunity to do the same thing. I was really hoping for a position like this, where my bishop pair would coordinate with my rook on the open b file, and I think black would just be crushing here. So that's why my opponent played the move bishop to h4, and I just castled. Now comes knight to c3. I played rook to b8, looking to contest the open file and attack this weak pawn. My opponent came up with a really nice plan here, knight to a4, and he's going to block the file with knight to b6. And I can't take the pawn because the knight now defends it. So I put my knight in the center, And he plays bishop takes, obviously, queen takes, and then knight to b6. And now that I see this really strong knight on b6, I can't really kick it out. So I should be thinking, okay, how do I force the play of the game to take place somewhere as far away from this strong knight as possible? And the answer is really I want the play of the game to take place around white's king. I don't have to checkmate the king. Most importantly, I just want to make this knight look as useless as possible. Because if we play in the center and I try and, move my queen out or something, the move knight to d7 is always looming. So I break in the center with e5. I'm looking to get my pieces out towards the king. The computer, however, liked the move rook to e8 first, which sidesteps knight to d7 sometime in the future. He plays the move b4 because if he took here, I probably would have either taken the c5 pawn with the queen or with the knight. I would have let the e5 pawn stay and pick it up later. I play the move bishop to g6, and this is a mistake because now he can take. If I take, he has the move knight d7, which we were trying to avoid this entire time. But most importantly, I did this because after I take on d4, I didn't want the knight to fork the pawn and the bishop, which forces bishop to d7, and that just looks like a sad position for black. After the move pawn takes, again, we can't take because of knight d7. I probably would have played bishop to h5, pinning the knight, and then preparing to bring my rook and queen over, and then take back the e-pawn with my rook. But he plays the move f3. He misses the opportunity to play pawn takes e5. I play knight to g5. Now he still has the opportunity to take, but he plays rook to e1, which puts his rook and my queen on the same file. Now I really should play the move e4 so that if pawn takes, knight takes, and black is doing really well here. Instead, I just kind of wanted to solve the problem with this pawn, and I took, and he took back with the knight. I played queen to c7, and I was fully aware that this knight was going to be very strong, coordinating with this knight, making it very difficult to defend c6. But I wasn't too worried about knight takes c6 in the future because, again, if these two knights now are all the way over on the queen side, then the king side is really where I want to play. And so the move queen to c7 really facilitates that idea. Because after rook to e3, preparing queen to d2, and then rook a to e1, doubling up on the e file. First, I contest the file with rook f to e8. But I'm aware that I'm only contesting it for a short time. Really, after he doubles up, I'm going to lose control of the e-file. But after queen to d2, I have the move queen to g3. And now, like I said, the attack is coming against the white queen. And I can already force a draw if I want it. For example, if he plays the move king to h1, I can simply play knight takes, pawn takes, queen takes, king moves here, check, and if he ever moves somewhere like here, I take the queen, check, and then here, and if he goes somewhere like here, I can check. He's forced to the back rank somewhere, and then this check is going to pick up the other rook. So for that reason, he has to shuffle his king back and forth, and for that reason, he also played rook a to e1. But now I have knight takes h3 with check, and the pawn is pinned, so he can't even take my knight. And if he plays the move king to h1, which is the best move, then I will simply repeat moves and make a draw. And that's why my opponent played the move king to f1, and this is exactly what I was hoping for, because this loses the game for white very quickly. So I'm going to pause my video and have you guys find the next move. Alright, so hopefully you guys found the crushing move rook takes e3. He played the move queen takes e3, which loses quite quickly. So first let's look at the move rook takes e3, which is the correct move. We're going to play the cute move queen to h2. If he takes the knight, he loses his queen. So the queen will come to c3. We'll insert this check. He will go here, we'll give this check, and again his king is going to be forced to run around on the back rank. The bishop and queen are going to be very strong, and this position is already losing for white. So my opponent played the move queen takes e3, and now I want you guys to find another Easter egg. Okay, so hopefully you found bishop to d3, double exclamation. This move is brilliant because if queen takes, then we have this simple checkmate on f2. So the queen is not allowed to take the bishop, and therefore he has to block on e2. The king has no squares to run to. My opponent plays the move knight to e2. It doesn't really matter if he blocks with the rook or with the knight, because we have this move knight to f4 next, and eventually we're going to be trading 2 times on the e2 square. So I played knight to f4, and my opponent resigned, but let's look why. So the top engine move here is queen to f2. He obviously has to guard the g1 square because I'm going to play queen to h2, and this would be checkmate if his queen was not able to come back. So he plays the move, he would play the move g3, queen to g1 also does the same thing. So let's look at g3, we check, queen comes back to block, only move, bishop takes check, rook takes, queen takes, king takes, and then knight takes. And we are up a whole rook and a pawn, and this would be easily winning for black. So hopefully you guys found that very useful. This nice attack on the king side to make this knight a bad piece. I thought that was a very clever plan, and white fell apart quite quickly. So I hope you guys enjoyed that, found it educational, and I'll catch you next time. Thanks.